I used to think the hardest part of getting married would be finding the right dress. Turns out, it was surviving my own engagement party. My name is Jenna Callahan. I'm 30, and 5 months ago, in a ballroom full of flowers forks and fake smiles, my mother looked me straight in the eye and disowned me. It happened during what should have been the happiest night of my life. My parents rented out this luxury event space in downtown Denver, floor-to-ceiling windows, white roses everywhere, a string quartet playing perfect background music. It was their idea to throw the party, said they wanted to support us. I should have known that was code for control. As the night went on, guests toasted with champagne. My dad mingled like a politician. My mom posed for pictures like we were on a magazine cover. Everything felt staged, polished, perfect, like we were acting out a script. And then it was my turn to speak. I stood up, heart pounding, smiling through nerves. Miles held my hand under the table. I started thanking people. Then I talked about him, how much he's changed my life, how grateful I was to have found someone who sees me, truly sees me for who I am. And then right in the middle of my sentence, my mother stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just said loud enough for everyone to hear. If you go through with this, Jenna, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. You're throwing everything away. Silence. 70 guests. Every single one frozen. Forks halfway to mouths. Glasses mid-toast. No one moved. I looked around the room. My aunts, my coworkers, family friends, all staring, waiting to see what I do. Like I was some kind of spectacle. And my dad, he didn't even flinch, just looked down like none of it was happening. Like he was used to this. And that's when I knew this wasn't a warning, it was a line in the sand. Miles stood beside me, calm, steady, no drama. He didn't need to say a word. He just held out his hand. So I took it, and without another word, we walked out. Right past the stunned silence, the perfectly folded napkins, the clinking crystal, and the people who claimed to love me. But here's what they didn't know. That moment, I'd been preparing for it since I was 17. Because walking away from that family wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. I didn't just walk out of that ballroom. I walked out of decades of being told who to be and what not to become. Because if you're wondering how a mother could say something that cruel in front of 70 people, you don't know my mother. Meredith Callahan has been running my life since the day I was born, and not in the sweet, overprotective mom way. No. This was curated, calculated, controlled. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect family. Big house in Cherry Creek, country club on weekends, Christmas cards with matching sweaters and forced smiles. But inside that house, it was a pressure cooker. Everything was about image. What I wore, who I was seen with, what I listened to, how I laughed. Yes, even that was constantly filtered through her invisible rulebook. When I was 13, I wanted to join theater. She said it was for weird kids who peaked in high school. She signed me up for tennis instead. When I was 15, I dyed my hair blue. Just a streak. One single streak. She dragged me into the bathroom and handed me a box of brown dye. When I refused, she locked me in my bedroom for 3 days, took my phone, told school I had the flu. Her favorite line was always, "You're a Callahan. Act like one." And my dad, Graham, he was just there, always in the background, reading the Wall Street Journal, nodding, occasionally saying, "Don't upset your mother," like he was some kind of referee with no whistle. I think I stopped expecting protection from him around the same time I stopped calling him Dad. To me, he was just Meredith's silent backup singer. But the real star of our family was Leah, my cousin. 4 years older, straight A's, head cheerleader, Stanford at 17. She raised her first round of funding before she could legally drink, and my mom absolutely worshipped her. She's everything a Callahan girl should be. She'd say at every family dinner, eyes locked on me like a warning. Leah was the standard. I was the disappointment. Every school award she got, I heard about it. Every internship, every boyfriend, every LinkedIn update, my mom devoured it like gospel. I remember once, freshman year, I brought home an art project I was proud of. I'd spent weeks painting this mountain scene. My mom looked at it for half a second and said, "Leah's startup just got featured in Forbes. Maybe you should spend less time doodling." I wish I was exaggerating, but that was just normal in our house. I grew up learning to shrink myself, smile politely, speak softly, don't make waves. And whatever you do, don't embarrass the family. So, when people ask me how I had the strength to walk out of that party, the truth is I'd been gathering that strength for years. Because when you grow up being told your voice doesn't matter, there comes a day when you finally decide to raise it. And mine was just getting started. College was my first breath of fresh air. I left Cherry Creek and moved to Boulder to attend the University of Colorado. And suddenly, the air felt lighter, the noise quieter. For the first time, I wasn't being told who to be every second of every day. I chose advertising as my major. Not because it was the smart choice, but because it felt like the first decision I ever made for me. I loved it. The creativity, the psychology, the way a single message could shift how people felt. It was strategy and art all rolled into one. Of course, to my mother, it was just arts and crafts with a deadline. She wanted me to switch to business, or law, or finance like Leah, something respectable. But I didn't budge. And it was during my sophomore year that everything really started to change. I was volunteering at a local charity mural project, painting walls for a shelter downtown when I met him. Miles. He showed up late with a cup of coffee in one hand and a toolbox in the other. He had paint on his jeans, tattoos down both arms, and the calmest energy I'd ever felt in another human. No flash, no ego, just present. We spent that whole afternoon talking about music and street art and favorite road trip stops. And I remember thinking, this is the first person who isn't trying to fix me. He listened without interrupting. He made space without asking for anything in return. He saw me not the version of me my mom sculpted, not the version my professors praised, just me. From that day on, Miles and I were something. At first, we didn't put a label on it. Just long walks, greasy burgers after late-night projects, slow mornings with black coffee and old records playing in the background. It was easy, it was warm, it was real. But, of course, I couldn't tell my family. Not yet. So I kept him a secret. For almost a year, I lived two separate lives. In one, I was the dutiful daughter attending brunches and sending updates about my GPA. In the other, I was falling in love with a man who never once made me feel like I had to earn affection. It wasn't until I posted a photo, just one on Instagram of us at a hiking trail, that the truth slipped out. I should have known better. Within 24 hours, I got an email from my mom. 3 pages. Subject line, "Your future is slipping away." She called him a distraction. Said I was risking everything for a man who works with his hands and won't take you anywhere in life. I remember staring at that email, my hands shaking, tears welling up. Not because she disapproved, but because I already knew she would. And I'd hoped just maybe for once she'd surprise me. She didn't. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to stop seeing Miles. I just wasn't going to give her the power to take him from me. Not anymore. A few weeks after that email, my mom invited me to dinner. No context, no tone, just a text that said, "Family dinner Sunday. 6 p.m., be on time." And like an idiot, I thought maybe it was an attempt to reconnect. Maybe she wanted to apologize, to understand. I showed up alone. Miles offered to come, but I told him not to. I still had this naive idea in my head that if I came without him, they might actually listen. They didn't. The moment I walked into that dining room, I knew something was off. The table was already set. Cloth napkins, candles, wine poured. But it wasn't just mom and dad. Leah was there. Of course. Wearing one of her $1,000 blazers and that same look she always had when she was about to give someone advice they didn't ask for. And sitting next to her were two of my parents' closest friends, people I hadn't seen since I was in braces. I sat down slowly, and then Mom opened with, "We're worried about you." That's how it began. Not dinner, and not family time, not a conversation, an ambush. Every sentence was dipped in concern but loaded like a weapon. "You've been pulling away lately. Your mother tells us you're struggling to focus. College is not the time to make emotional decisions. You don't want to waste your potential on a phase." A phase. That's what they called Miles. Leah chimed in halfway through swirling her wine like she was on a panel at some corporate summit and said, "If you're serious about your future, I can get you an interview at my firm. We're hiring in brand strategy." She said it like it was a favor. Like she was throwing me a bone. Like she was rescuing the family screw-up. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just sat there nodding, holding my breath, watching them talk like I wasn't even in the room. That night, I drove straight to Miles's place. I walked in, dropped my bag, and just stood there, frozen. He didn't rush over, didn't overwhelm me with questions. He just looked at me and asked, "What do you want, Jen?" That broke me, because no one had ever asked me that before. Not my parents, not Leah, not even myself. And the truth was, I didn't know. I sat on the floor and cried. Not pretty tears, not poetic sadness, just cracked open full-body sobs, and when I finally spoke, the words came out in a whisper. "I'm terrified." He knelt down beside me. I said, "I don't know how to be free. I don't know who I am without them telling me who to be." And he didn't offer some perfect answer. He just held me. And for the first time in my life, I let someone catch me when I fell. A few months after that night on the floor, things started to shift. Miles and I got engaged. Quietly. No big announcement. No Instagram post. Just a simple moment, the two of us in the park where we first kissed. He didn't get down on one knee. He just held out a ring, looked me in the eye and said, "You don't have to do this alone anymore." And I said yes. Without hesitation. That same week, I launched my own creative studio. No investors, no safety net. Just me, my laptop, and a fire in my chest that said, "You have something to prove." I picked up small clients, local cafes, a startup here and there. I worked late, skipped weekends, and for the first time in my life, everything I built was mine. Then, Leah found out. She called me half laughing and said, "Freelancing." "You're calling that a career?" Now I bit my tongue. Because if there's one thing Leah knows how to do, it's cut you down with a compliment and a smirk. Still, I told myself this doesn't matter, because for once, I wasn't building something to impress them. I was building it to save myself. But then, my mom called. She said she wanted to throw us an engagement party. I froze. Everything in me screamed, "Don't do it," but I heard her voice calm and sweet for once. "Let's start fresh, Jenna. No drama. We want to celebrate you." I don't know why, but I believed her. Miles didn't. He looked at me and said, "If we do this, just know I'll follow your lead. But be ready." I told him it was just one night, a chance to show them I was happy, that I'd made a life on my terms. I didn't know I was walking straight into a trap. The night of the party, the ballroom looked almost identical to the one years before. Same champagne, same white roses, same shallow smiles. But this time I was different. I stood taller. I didn't shrink. Miles stood beside me, grounded as ever. We made our rounds, took polite photos, avoided landmines. And then, after the cake was cut and the glasses were raised, my mother called for attention. She raised her glass, smiled, and said to Jenna, "May she come to her senses before it's too late." Laughter followed, polite, nervous, but I didn't laugh. And then she looked right at me and said, "If you marry him in my eyes, you're no longer a Callahan." Gasps. Silence. Again. I stood there blinking, heart pounding in my ears. And before I could speak, Leah stepped forward. Calm, composed, and crueler than I'd ever seen her. She said, "We were going to recommend you for the Vantage campaign, but clearly you've chosen a different life." Vantage. That name hit me like a punch to the gut. It was my dream contract, a national rebrand, the kind of work that puts you on the map. And what I didn't know, what they never told me, was that Leah's firm held the keys. And now, she was locking the door. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I loved someone they didn't approve of. Because I chose freedom over legacy. And in that moment, something in me snapped. Not out of anger, out of clarity, because I finally saw them for what they were. Not a family, a club, with rules, with standards, and with zero tolerance for anyone who colored outside the lines. And I had just committed the ultimate sin. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't yell. We didn't cry. We just walked out hand in hand into the cold Denver night. No one followed. No one stopped us. In the car, I pulled out my phone and deleted every contact with my family's name on it. Mom, Dad, Leah, all gone in seconds, like cutting cords that had been strangling me for years. 2 weeks later, Miles and I eloped. Just the two of us, a justice of the peace, and 2 friends who signed the papers. We stood in a quiet corner of the rocky snow, falling softly, and promised each other something no one else had ever offered me. Unconditional respect, no drama, no audience, no last name expectations, just love. Simple, solid, ours. And after that, I went to work. I poured everything, my anger, my grief, my clarity into the business I was building. I started recording TikToks about branding, storytelling, creative confidence. They blew up. In a matter of weeks, I signed 3 new clients, brands I admired, who paid what I deserved. And while my world was expanding, theirs was collapsing. Leah's startup, the one she used to flaunt at every dinner, got hit with a lawsuit for IP theft. Turns out one of her lead developers had stolen code from a competitor. It was all over TechCrunch, screenshots, legal filings, investors pulling out. One by one, Leah's little empire cracked and crumbled. And just like that, the golden child wasn't so golden anymore. As for my parents' silence, not a single call, not one email, just nothing. Until one day, a letter showed up in our mailbox. No return address, just my name written in careful cursive. I stood there holding it, heart pounding like I was 16 again and waiting for report cards. I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the counter, walked away, made tea, sat in silence. And finally, I unfolded it. Inside was a single page. From my father. He wrote that they'd been reflecting. That they missed me. That family is complicated, but still family. He didn't mention the party, didn't apologize, didn't say her name. Just ended with, "Let's not throw away what we've built." Think about it. I folded the letter back up. And I did think about it. I thought about every dinner where I was told to be more like Leah. Every dream they called a phase. Every time I was told to sit still, smile pretty, and stay small. And then I thought about where I was now. With Miles, with clients who respected me, with a version of myself I'd fought like hell to become. And I knew the answer. A week after that first letter, another envelope arrived. This one wasn't from my father. It was from her. Meredith. Her handwriting was sharper, more deliberate, like every loop and line had something to prove. The letter inside was short, colder. She didn't apologize. Not really. She started with "Leah made a mistake," then followed it with, "But you should still reach out." Family matters. No mention of the engagement party. No acknowledgement of the words that gutted me in front of 70 people. No regret. Just a quiet request to move on. Like nothing happened. But I had already heard the whispers. Leah's engagement over. Her fiancé left the moment the lawsuits hit the press. Investors walked. Her apartment lease in San Francisco fell through. And the cherry on top, they sold the Aspen cabin, The same one my mom used to brag about at every fundraiser. Gone. All of it. To cover legal costs and keep Leah out of court. Now they were living in a condo near Littleton. No view. No parties. No more speeches about the Callahan legacy. And still, they never once said we were wrong. They didn't want me back because they missed me. They wanted me back because I had something to offer now, because I was succeeding in ways they couldn't control. It was quiet begging, wrapped in pride, masked in tradition. But I saw it for what it was. I sat down that night and wrote a letter of my own. One sentence. You buried me, but I grew roots. That garden's not for you anymore. I folded the page, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in the back of my desk drawer. I never mailed it, because they didn't deserve a response. Not this time. Some people think revenge is slamming a door in someone's face. But sometimes, it's just never opening it again. Success didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. Late nights, missed calls, clients who ghosted, clients who came back. Doubt, then clarity, then more doubt. But I kept going. And then, it happened. My agency won the Colorado Creative Impact Award. I got the email on a Thursday morning while eating cereal in sweats. I read it 3 times before it sank in. It wasn't just a trophy. It was proof. Proof that I could build something meaningful without my mother's approval. Without Leah's connections. Without pretending to be someone I wasn't. The night of the ceremony, I stood backstage, clutching a note card I never even used. When they called my name, I walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. And right there in the 3rd row was Miles, wearing his black button-down, hands in his lap, eyes glassy. I took a breath, and I said, "You don't have to fit the mold you were born into. Sometimes, breaking it is the only way to breathe." The room went quiet. Not a stunned silence, a still silence. And then, applause. But I wasn't thinking about the crowd. I was looking at him. Because I knew without Miles, I never would have gotten here. Later that night, back home, I changed into pajamas and made tea. And for the first time in months, I sat down and opened a journal. Clean page, fresh ink, and I wrote, "This is the story of how I died and came back my own way." Because that's how it felt. Like the old me, the obedient version, the polished product, the perfect daughter, had to fall apart completely, so something real could grow in her place. And now, I was finally alive. I don't know what your version of this story looks like. Maybe you have a Meredith in your life, someone who loves control more than connection. Maybe your Leah isn't even family. Maybe it's your own fear, your own voice that's hardest to face. But here's what I've learned. Approval isn't love. Control isn't care. And family isn't blood. It's the people who see your whole self and stay. The people who don't need you to shrink, who don't need you to prove, who love you even when you're messy, uncertain, unfinished. That's who I build my life with now. That's who I choose. And maybe it's time you choose too. Has your family ever made you feel not enough? What helped you reclaim your voice? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story hit home for you, stay close. We share new stories like this every single day. Stories that make you feel seen, understood, and maybe a little less alone. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice telling the truth to help someone else finally speak theirs. Thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here.